Hello, Bante. I'm having some weird issue where I can't see the chat. But although I did a pop out thing and now I can see the chat. I don't know what's going on with YouTube today for some reason. You don't see anything where you can type, but you don't see the chat, Bante? Huh. Oh yeah. Is anybody else having trouble that they can't see the chat? All right. Okay, interesting. Okay, welcome Sathira, Audrey, and I'm sure John is not far. There is John, right? Amy, Rosalinda, Millionaire, KJ, welcome. Adriana, okay. Yeah, I had to do like the chat pop out to actually see the chat, or else it won't actually show. I don't know what's going on. Hello, Sister K. All right, let's get started with some chanting. It's a short one today. Reed isn't here, is he? Because we're going to chant his favorite. Oh. Yeah, I reloaded the page, Robert, and then it reset the stream. So I'm not doing it again. This is, I can see you guys with the pop out, so that's good enough. Yeah, we're in a bit of a cold snap. All right. So let's do our chanting. Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Hello, Douse. Uttana Sutta, page 85. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Uttahatta nisidatta koato supite novo. Atura nahi kade nidda. Sallaviddana rupatang uttahatta nisidatta dalhang sikkatta santiya mavopamatte vinyaya machuraja amohittaya vasanuge yaya deva manusa cha sitta tittanti attika taratehang visattakang Kanovo ma upajjaka kannatita ahi sochanti nirayam hi sapamatta pamado rajo pamada danupatito rajo appamadena vijaya babbe salamatonti matanoti. So English. Wake up, make an effort. Get up and sit. What need for sleep? For the sick, what rest is there, pierced by the arrow of pain? Get up and sit. Train hard for peace. Let not Mara know that you are negligent, deluded, and under his control. Cross beyond this craving, tied to, desiring which gods and men remain. Don't let this chance pass by. Those who do so grieve, sending themselves to hell. From dust arises negligence, from negligence to more. By diligence and knowledge, pluck out the dart oneself. Okay. Let's see, Sierra, welcome. All right, friends. So welcome to DHammapalooza. Another Monday night, another DHammapalooza. And I don't notice, at least in the chat, I don't notice anybody who's brand new, but just in case somebody who is watching who's not typed in the chat yet, welcome to DHammapalooza. What we do here, Brandon, good to see you again. What we do here every Monday night from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. is have a festival of Dhamma. That means that we do a variety of things related to listening and practicing Dhamma. We did some chanting just now. We're going to do some guided meditations later. And the rest often it depends on you guys, right? It often depends on, I like to let you guys have an impact and take the lead in how DHammapalooza is going to turn out. Right? I can read suttas. You know, there's thousands of pages of suttas. I could just break out a sutta. I can just talk on a topic. That's one thing. But I like to have you guys determine how this is going to be. Right? I like to give you guys a voice. And so what this means is, since this is a community event, in the chat, you can feel free to talk to each other. Right? It doesn't interrupt me. It doesn't bother me one bit. Right? If you have any questions you'd like me to answer, or even Bante Pamuto is on here, at least for a little bit. You can type those in the chat if you have any questions. Right? If you have any topics, Buddhist topics you'd like me to discuss, you can also request a topic to discuss. Or if you don't have anything, then we can move forward with some readings. So let me give you guys a couple minutes in the chat just to see what pops up. Adriana, now you're trying to be like those people at the monastery that I went to that were like, have lots of questions for Ajahn so we don't have to chant. Have lots of questions. I was not good with them because I didn't have lots of questions to ask Ajahn. So they was like, oh, okay, well, we're going to chant. Well, after the first time I chanted, I was like, okay, I'm on a hardwood floor, no cushions, and we have to chant for a half hour and then meditate for 40 minutes. Yeah, I'm gonna start making up questions. No, not too. Yeah. All right. So let's look at the chat here. So the divine messengers, first, this is obviously a favorite topic of mine. Most of you have heard me talk about it quite often. So the divine messengers are literally old age, sickness, and death. It's not like they're not like beings. They're not like devas that come down and say, beware of old age, sickness, and death. They are literally old age, sickness, and death. Right? The divine messengers are literally those. Right? And the Buddha in a sutta, he talks about King Yama. And he talks about how a person does bad deeds of body, speech, and mind, and he goes to an unhappy place, and he talks with King Yama. And King Yama says, good man, did you not see the divine messengers? And he says, I don't know. Right? He says, did you not see an old person? And he's like, oh, yeah. I said, well, you did. You obviously didn't. Did you not see a sick person? Did you not see a dead person? Right? And then he says that King Yama says, well, you're the one who performed that action. Nobody else. Right? Your mother, your father, your siblings did not perform these actions. So you are the owner of your actions and you'll have to abide by them. Right? So then it goes into this whole line of all kinds of hellish tortures that the person goes through. But the idea is that the divine messengers keep you grounded. It's kind of funny to think a divine messenger keep you grounded, but it keeps you grounded in reality. That's what the divine messengers are for. Keep you grounded in reality. Keep reminding you that this life is short. At any moment, you can die. At any moment, you can have an illness. Right? Any moment, you can end up going blind or deaf or dumb or whatever, right? And at any moment, you can get a phone call and somebody that you love has died, right? Or has a terminal illness or whatever, right? So this is the Buddha wants us to reflect on what is the reality of things. The reality is old age, sickness, and death. Okay? So we should remind ourselves of this often. That's why you have the 5 subjects of contemplation. Right? The 5 subjects of contemplation, the first 3 of the 5 are the divine messengers: old age, sickness, and death. So old age, sickness, and death are literally what you should be seeing. Don't be the kind of person like somebody you know gets cancer and you're so freaked out. You don't want to be around them. And that does happen. I've seen it happen. I've had enough people in my life have cancer and even die from cancer to seeing that happen. It does happen, right? And it's not because the person's bad. It's just because they simply don't know how to function and to deal with somebody close to them having a terminal or a life-threatening illness. They just don't know how to do it. Why? Because they've avoided it. They have ignored the divine messengers their whole lives. And then once it hits close, they don't know what to do. Right? But if you reflect on it often, that you have, old age, sickness, and death. Old age, sickness, and death. You reflect on it often. And then when it happens to you, when it happens to other people, you're like, well, this is the nature of reality. This is the nature of being born. Right? So it's very important. These 3 are so important that they are literally what spurred the Buddha on to investigate reality and to escape samsara. These 3 things. So it's very important that anybody who considers themselves a Buddhist, anybody who follows the Noble Eightfold Path, that you often remind yourself and really look and see the divine messengers, right? Look at older people. Watch older people. Watch how life is like when you're old, right? Pains just to move, struggles to get up from a chair, right? All these things. Observe these things. Watch them. Don't run away from them. Don't escape them. Be with them. I mean, be with old people, yes, but I mean, be with the divine messengers, right? Let them in as part of your life because they are. Understand them. Don't run away from them. Right? And then you will develop wisdom from that. You will develop gratitude from that. you will develop a sense of urgency from that allows you to practice well and live well. So the divine messengers, don't run away from old people are cool. I grew up around the greatest generation. I literally grew up around dozens, if not hundreds, of older people that I met in my youth. So I always enjoyed being around older people and listening to their stories and things like that. So let's see here. Let's just check in the chat after I've come off of my little diatribe here. Robert says, what's a typical day for you at the farm? Pretty open. You know, the only things that I have like scheduled that I do every day at the farm, other than like online Dhamma stuff, is take care of the chickens. And that's about an hour to an hour and a half in the morning and about 45 to an hour in the evening. That's it. So it's about 2 hours a day, which official work, which equals about as much as time as you work at Bhavana. Although when I was at Bhavana, I was working way more than 2 hours a day because I had a lot more responsibilities and there was not that many people. So it's actually easier working here on the farm than it was when I was at Bhavana. When I was with the Indonesians for 4 months, I didn't have to lift a finger and I gained weight. So I'm kind of enjoying getting some workout in the farm here. All right. Plus, it's good taking care of chickens, right? It's like taking care of another living being. Living beings that are really, really annoying and really can test your patience. And so it's good practice. Lots of good metta practice. All right. So, who's asking about the fourth messenger? There's no like the whole normal story of the Buddha that you've heard doesn't exist in the early texts. It's mostly later made up, right? And so the idea of the four divine messengers is not in the early texts. The fourth divine messenger is part of the Buddha's story where he sees an old person, a sick person, a dead person, and then he sees a monastic, a shaven-headed ascetic, a samana, right? And then he says, okay, well, these people probably they're in search. Well, I should go and search too. And then, so the fourth messenger in those traditional mythologies of the Buddha's going forth is a monastic. That's the fourth messenger. But in the early text, there's only three divine messengers. There's no fourth one. Because then, geez, if that was the case, you'd be. I just told you have to observe the messenger, so you'd have to like follow a monk around or something. I don't know. I'm observing the monk. I'm observing old age, sickness, death in monks. Monks everywhere. Well, maybe if you were in a Buddhist country, anyway. Okay. Is King Yama supposed to be a metaphor? No. King Yama of being. In the early text, there's no such thing as this being is a metaphor. It is quite literal in the early texts. Yama is a type of being in samsara, so is Mara. There are many Maras. There are probably many Yamas, right? Many different types of devas. Brandon says, can you talk about Bhavana Society? When travels open up and in-person retreats are available, I think I want to start going. Bhavana Society is changing a lot. I don't know anything about what's going on there. So anything that I tell you about Bhavana society is not going to be, it's not going to match up with whatever it's happening now. I don't live there anymore. Bhante Silananda has left under some new management. Things are changing. I have no idea what's going on at Bhavana. I hear things, some people, like a former board member calls me every once in a while. And so I hear a little bit of things here and there, but there's nothing that I can say that would be an accurate representation of how Bhavana is now. So it's probably not worth me talking about it. You have to go there and find out. Give it a shot. Robert says, how bad do you have to be to end up in one of the hells, assuming you believe their literal existence? If you're in general a good person and have done some stupid, harmful things in the past. See, this is the problem, Robert. It has nothing to do with your life in this life. You could be the freaking Mother Teresa in this life. It doesn't matter. You have plenty of lifetimes of really bad deeds in your past. So this is an important thing to understand about when it comes to karma and rebirth, right? Your next life doesn't necessarily have to do with this life, right? It's kind of like it's like a slot machine. When you die, okay, hells, oh man, right? You don't know. Right. This is why Bhante Ji, my preceptor, who's the abbot, I think he's still the abbot of Bhavana. That might change, I don't know, but he would always say the only money back guarantee is when you become a Sotipana, is when you become a stream enter. Then no more planes of woe, no more bad destinations. Right. Until then, you don't know what your next life is going to be. Right. You have eons upon eons upon eons of karma that go into deciding what your next life is. You don't know. So you don't really have a say, right? The only say you have is right here in this life and how you live it and how you practice. That's all you have. Robert's saying, honestly, I think a lot of Roberts has a lot of questions, a lot of comments. You guys, all the rest of you guys got to step up here. What's going? Robert's taking up the chat here, but he makes good points. Honestly, I think a lot of problems in our society comes from the denial of old age, sickness, and death in the U.S. This is the amount of overreaction and fear and panic that has happened because of COVID. A large part of it is because we are so tucked away from death, the reality of death, right? We're so tucked away from the reality of illness, right? That we can't even imagine, oh no, but this is nature. Throughout all of our existence, there have been all kinds of pandemics and things that have killed off a lot of people, right? But we're so freaked out that we can't even handle, oh my God, there's going to be thousands of people will die. That's the reality of this, right? We just assume, when I talk about I'm mostly talking about people in what they call the first world. Right? There's people in places in this world that are still dealing with all kinds of stuff. They got, bandits or robbers can rape and kill them, pandemics, all kinds of, horrible tyrant governments. There are people in this world that really know dukkha, right? Most of us in these, places like America, we don't really know reality, right? We don't really know death. Even when somebody dies, it's usually at a hospital or it's hidden away behind a funeral home, and they really pretty up the corpse and all kinds of things like that. We don't know. This is why we can't handle this. We can't understand these things, right? But this is the nature of reality. Don't be deluded. Don't fall prey to lots of fears and delusions. Understand reality, and then you can act skillfully. All right. But you're saying there's 5 divine messengers? That's interesting. I don't know that. Okay, yeah. If you can send me that, send me the links, and I definitely the sutta links, and I'll definitely check it out. That's interesting. All right. Oh, chat jumped on me. Where am I going here? Good. Bante says chickens. Good training for running a monastery. It's so funny how many similes and thoughts. Like watching the chickens. There's like types of chickens who are like types of people. And you just watch them kind of interact with each other. It's quite interesting. Oh, chicken poop's not a big deal. I'm not worried about that. They just don't listen. They're just chaotic Tyrannosaurus Rexes, those chickens. All right. Robert says, I read somewhere that the story we were told about the Buddha was actually a story he told about a previous life, a previous Buddha. I think that's actually correct. I think I do remember in the suttas him talking about that. I think that is actually correct. It's been a long time since I read that sutta, but that does ring a big bell. Hello, Jose. Good to see you. That was from what, that was from 8 minutes ago. That's how far back I am in the chat. People talking about old age, sickness, and death, and how our society hides it away. Very true. Very true. I remember like 4 years ago reading I think it was in a National Geographic that there's this society in the Philippines that like I don't think you'd call it mummifying it, but you see this picture of these 2 little girls, and they're just like, on their stomachs watching the TV, just like a typical scene that you'd see in it, in America or wherever. And there's this little bundled up grandma in the chair. It's like, oh, it's so cute. The grandma's, watching TV with the girl. The grandma's dead. Grandma has been dead for 6-7 months. The grandma was in the chair, right? And as Americans, we're like, oh my God, how does that work? But no, right? That's the way. And in many cultures, remember, you're talking to anthropology major here. So all this stuff is stuff that I love. And there's many cultures that, they put their loved ones in the, in the ground, and then later they dig them up and they take their bones, right? It's part of like the ancestor worshiping, ancestor respecting cultures. Oh heck, I mean, if you could get like a couple dozen a couple dozen eggs a day for what amounts to essentially being free, chickens are a pretty good deal. I mean, that's even at Buddhist Insights they had those three chickens, but three chickens is chickens are actually really social, and three chickens you need like a bunch chickens like a bunch of chickens. They got their whole pecking order and all kinds of stuff like that. All right. How are we talking about chickens on Dhammapalooza? let me finish up here. All right. Okay, so I'm caught up here. It's just mostly comments. Oh, Sierra says, Bante, was there a specific moment when you knew you wanted to become a monastic? I don't think a specific moment, like an actual, like a eureka kind of moment, like that I remember, but it was around 2010 that I first started getting like kind of inklings and desires to do it. My practice had, I mean, I had been meditating for 5 years. I had been a Buddhist for 2 at that point. My practice had been taking off. My nibbida had been rising, right? My dispassion or my disenchantment with the world. And it just started seeming like a really good idea. And it was something, at that point, it was in 2010 where the first person that I told, obviously being a bit of an Italian mama's boy, the first person I told was my mother. And I always make the joke, Sierra, you're fairly new, so you probably haven't heard me say this, but I told my mom, remember when you wanted me to be a Catholic priest? How about a Buddhist monk? And she looked at me kind of like, what? Right? Now, of course, I told a handful of people over the next 4 years that I was going to be a monastic, but most people actually didn't really believe I was going to be a monastic until I resigned from my job. Once I resigned from my career, and I was like, okay, I'm going, and people were like, oh my God, he's really going. No way. He's really going. Yeah. So it was a variety of things, really. It was my practice. Like that was a thing. There's a couple different things that have happened, and essentially they happened because of the practice. My practice led me to insights and reflections and understandings that led me to want to a little bit that led me want to try this out. Let me this monk thing sounds like it might be not a bad idea. Let me look at this. Right? And then it kind of also surprised people, because from in between the time that I thought I wanted to become a monk and the time I did, I had weight loss surgery. I got in crazy shape. I had my career, was taking off. I was doing much better. I got my job as a foster and adoptive home recruiter. I had the most attention from women I ever had in my life. Like, I mean, everything was going pretty good. The average person would think, oh man, this is a good life, making decent money, all this attention, everything's going well, moving up in the world, really good. And then it's like, and I I typed this big Facebook post like, I'm leaving the world. Most of you never knew. but see you later. Right? And so like that's kind of how it was. So I didn't leave. This is a misconception that people have about monastics. If you become a monastic to escape the world, you're never going to make it because you can't escape the world, right? If you the world is what? The world is greed, hatred, and delusion, right? And you might think that there's no greed, hatred, and delusion in a monastery. You're absolutely wrong. Wherever there are people, government, corporations, monasteries, wherever, schools, right? Colleges, wherever there's people, there's a ton of greed, hatred, and delusion. That's the way it goes. Right? And I was one of those deluded people that thought like monasteries and monks are everything's so perfect and wonderful and everybody's so kind to each other and everybody gets along. Nah. Never. And then I heard from other monks like Bhante Sujato actually in one of his talks about this, how monasteries are nests of greed, hatred, and delusion. And I was like, okay, good. I don't feel so bad. It's not just me. Right? So you can't escape the world by becoming a monk. Right? I left when essentially I was at the peak of my worldly game. Right? I was doing great in every measure. And it's like, okay, peace, done. See you later. Right? So, and you see that there are monastics like, like Ayasudama was a lawyer, right? Like, like you see like a bunch of monastics that are like, like high powered, like, people who, who had, like materially and everything, it's all good. But they decide, well, nah, I'm going to become a monastic. See you later. Right? That's the way it goes. All right, let me keep up with the chat here. Adriana wants us to talk more about chickens and less reading a sutta. All right, so we're gonna have to read a sutta then, because my boy Ajahn Chah, that's what he would do. He would troll you and do the opposite so that you could face your defilements. So we're gonna read a sutta. All right. KJ is right. He's like Adriana. She'll catch on. Rosalinda asks, why did I ordain specifically in Theravada instead of other schools? Well, see, before I ordained, I was a Buddhist 4 or 5 years, right? So it's not even necessarily why I ordained in a specific tradition. It's more the question is, how did I come to choosing a specific tradition? Right? Because it's kind of weird if your chosen tradition is, Theravada, and then you become like a Mahayana monk. It's kind of like, well, how did that work? I mean, sure, like there are like, I've met like Mahayana monks who have become Theravada monks and things like that, but most people, if they become a monastic, it's in the one that they find works best for them. And so, okay, Brandon, I see your question here, but okay. So for me, right, I think, first of all, the ability to choose a Buddhist tradition is total, what do they call it? Not first world problems, but it's a total modern person problem. because that didn't exist. Not even 60 years ago, it didn't even exist. Like that's not even like like the senior monastics, like the Ajahn Brahms and the Ajahn Sumedhos, and the senior monastics from the West who became monastics. They weren't like, oh, yeah, this is like, I live in a place where I can choose, like, here, over here's Tibetan, over here's Theravada, over here's, let me figure it out. No, like they were just like, oh, there's this Buddhist thing. I'm wandering around doing my hippie thing. Let me check out this Buddhist thing. Right. And some of them became Tibetan monks and some of them became Theravada monks because it depended on where they were and who they met and all kinds of stuff. Right. So the ability to choose is a very, very recent development. And so the way I view it is that the ability to choose what type of Buddhism you follow has a lot to do with your temperaments and your views and what you're looking for. For me, with my anthropology, archaeology background, with my searching for, for the earliest truth and all that kind of stuff, for me, and also simple and pragmatic. So like all the things that fit my temperament, that fit what I was looking for, I found in Theravada, right? And I didn't start to, this is the funny thing, right? I had never heard the word Theravada before I decided I wanted to become a Buddhist. What I knew of Buddhism was what most people knew. Dalai Lama. In the 90s, there was all kinds of Buddhist movies, and they were all from the Tibetan Buddhist, perspective. And so it was more of a matter of what would you call it? Trial and error, and say, okay, I like that, and this is not for me. This is not for me. This is for me. Right? And so, Theravada was the tradition. And so that it was natural that, once I found a place, especially a place like Bhavana that was very early Buddhist text centric, right? Like if you've never been to Bhavana, but you're part of our Sangha on the Discord, then you would pretty much fit into, you go to a teaching with Bhante G or whatever, it's the same. Right, it's focusing on the suttas, focusing on the early texts, and so that was a lucky thing for me that I only had to drive, 6 hours to visit a place that taught the way that I felt was most important for me, right, and I still do today, which is study and practice with the framework of the early texts. That's why I started the Discord. All right, that's why it's not a general Buddhist Discord. It is has a very specific focus, very specific, very specific focus. That's the best way of putting it. All right. Robert says, I would love to see the look on your mom's face. Well, the reason I said, you remember when you wanted me to be a priest was, I'm from a Roman Catholic family, Italian family. I was an altar boy. My whole school was Catholic school until college, right? So I was heavily raised into the Catholic Church. So, there was a time, at least maybe when I was a bit younger, where my mom had the idea, oh, he could be a priest. And I even thought about it, so it's like once I became a monk and I wore robes, it was like not the first time in my life I wore robes before. You see those like altar boy robes, right? Although those are easier to wear. They just have a hole. You just put them right through your head. The monk's robes are much more complicated, much more impermanent. All right. Brandon is asking, what are your suggestions for a lay Buddhist who is on the fence of whether to ordain or not? Well, one of the important things to understand about ordaining is that a part of it's not up to you, right? A part of it has to do with, in many ways, like, the circumstances of your birth and your life and all kinds of stuff like that, right? There are a goodly number of things that can disqualify you from being a monastic, right? And some places and some traditions, there might be places where a certain thing would disqualify you in one, but another tradition or another place they might let you in. But there are, the more the more I got into monasticism, the more I realized that it was kind of like, it was a blessing that I was able to become a monastic, right? Good karma, whatever, that I was able to become a monastic in this life. Because there is a couple, I could have been born with something and then I'm just not a monastic. I can't be for this life, right? So there's a part of it that's out of your hands, one way or the other. Now, the part that's within your control is practicing and observing your mind and really questioning yourself. And by questioning, I mean you ask yourself a question and you wait for an answer. Right? Don't try to add into an answer. I mean, you literally ask yourself a question and you wait for an answer. And that might not be a verbal, your mind might not say something, but you might have a strong intuition, a strong feeling. All right. One of the things that I did in the last couple of years before becoming a monastic is I would, in my mind, I would prop up my best lay life that I could think of. And I would prop up a monastic life in my mind. And I would wait to see kind of like which one my mind was leaning towards. And only once in 3 or 4 years did my mind not essentially shoot straight for monasticism. Right? But I kept an open mind. I kept, I wasn't, I didn't become a shut-in. I didn't, it's like, oh, I'm just going to sit in my room and wait to become a monastic, right? I kept an open mind because I didn't know. Maybe it was something that I was going to do in this life. Maybe it was something I wasn't. I don't know. Right? So I kept an open mind and I kept reflecting on my intentions, reflecting on my thoughts, reflecting on what was most important to me. Right? And asking myself that question. Posing that thing, your most ideal lay life versus your most ideal monastic life. Interestingly enough, most of what's happened to me since becoming a monastic was not part of my most ideal monastic life, but that's reality. That's the way it goes. And so by continuously questioning, by continuously observing your intentions and your desires, then you'll know, right? Is this something I really want to do or not? And you also have to understand that there is sacrifice that has to go along with it. Right? Like the most important thing in my life for most of my life was family. I helped raise my nephew. I was his father figure. I lived with him from the time he was 1 to the time I left when he was 10, right? The most important thing in my life for most of my life was family. But at one point, Dhamma edged that out. And I had to say, at one point I was like, if I don't at least try, I don't know. I might not make it. I might not make it long enough to become a monk. I might not stay a monk for the rest of my life. But if I don't at least try, I know on my deathbed I'll regret it. Right? So even if there were doubts, I knew that I at least had to try. Right? And it was because I had been continuously questioning myself and thinking about, and every time I've, was able to talk to a monk, which wasn't that much. I mean, maybe I was able to talk to, at least until I got to Bhavana. Then there was a couple more monks for me to talk to. But until that time, there was, I maybe was able to speak to one or two monks in a couple years, right? And I got good advice. Like I would say my two favorite advices that I got before going to Bhavana to become a monk was, the first one was, find a place, go there as often as you can. I mean, Bhavana was 4 states and 5 hours away from me. I couldn't go there every weekend, right? So find a place, go there as much as you can, get to know the monks, try to see how they live, right? Let them get to know you. And then if it works out, then you apply, you go there, and they already know you, and you move forward. And that's what happened with me. I found Bhavana. Bhavana was the place I was going to 3-4 times a year. I was going to Bhavana. By the end of the first year, they knew my name, right? And they knew that I was thinking about becoming a monastic, right? And so by the time that I put in the application, they already knew who I was. I had been going for retreats there for 3 years, right? And it was, okay, come on in, so that's the first thing, right? The second thing, that my favorite piece of advice, my absolute favorite piece of advice, is almost like a Zen koan, but it's 100% accurate. I love this. This is from the monk who taught me how to do walking meditation, Bhante Dhammajiva, who lives in Sri Lanka, who I've only met once in my life, but one of these days I'm going to meet him again, just so I can thank him. I met him at the beginning of my Buddhist practice, right? He was the one who taught me walking meditation. That changed everything for me. I wouldn't be a monk if it wasn't for him teaching me walking meditation. That's not hyperbole. That is literal. Same thing with Ajahn Brahm. I wouldn't be this far if it wasn't for Ajahn Brahm. And also say for Bhante G. I mean, these are all monks who were really important to me in my path. So he said to me, become a monk. Oh, he said, become a monk when becoming a monk and not becoming a monk are the same in your mind. Right? For like a couple of years, what the hell is he talking? I mean, it sounds pretty neat, but what is he talking about? But then I realized, right? How I said before, how, my life was really good, right? And I thought to myself, I want to become a monk, but there's no guarantee that they'll let me, right? Somebody has to actually take me in and ordain me, right? So I don't know if I'll be able to become a monk. Am I okay about that? And I was. And I was like, well, if I can't become a monk, then I still have the Noble Eightfold Path. If I'm a monk, I still have the Noble Eightfold Path. And I still say to this day, I've only been a monk 5.5 years. I don't know if I'm going to be a monk for the rest of my life. I don't know. But if one day I decide that being a monk is not for me, I still have the Noble Eightfold Path. Right? So it took me a couple of years before I realized the wisdom of Bhante Dhammajiva's statement in that. Right? It goes to what I was saying before. If you're trying to escape the world to become a monk, it's not going to help. It's going to make things worse. So many times, I was at one point, I was involved in reading applications to come to Bhavana. And Kathy, who doesn't work there anymore either, they let her go. It was, she would read it and she would say, and you know how many, I would say 80% of the people who wanted to come to Bhavana to become a monk were 22-year-olds who were like, my girlfriend dumped me. I hate my parents. I want to become a monk. And we were like, this one goes in the garbage right here. That's not happening. That's not the right reasoning to want to go to a monastery and become a monk. It's just not working out that way. All right. So let me check the chat here. Okay, so there's not that much more. That's not that much more chat than when I started. Very good. Hello, Bella and Gautam. Robert says, you kind of just wrap the monk's robes around you, don't you? No, no, it's a bit more complicated than that one. It also depends on how you do the robes. This has become like the DHammapalooza of monastics, hasn't it? Javier Fernandez Vina. Hello, friend. Bont has a question. There are many interpretations of dependent origination: 3 life, 1 mind moment. Not Jnanavira, Madhyamika, etc. Which one is your preferred understanding? I don't believe it has anything to do with mind moments. So for me, that's out right there. Mind moment is not something you find in the early texts. It's something that was kind of added later in Abhidhamma and things like that. So the Buddha is not talking about a mind moment. I don't know about, I know about the, breaking it up into 3 lifetimes thing. And I don't really have a strong opinion on that. What I do understand, what I do know is that it is explaining the process through which we keep being reborn. Right? It is explaining the cycle of samsara. That I do know, and that I understand. Right? So it is literally explaining, well, you want to know why you're reborn? Here it is. Ignorance. Right? Craving. Clinging. Right? That's why you're reborn. So this is a very it's important to understand in that regard. And it's also important to understand that really that is talking about dependent origination is much more than just the 12 links. The 12 links are talking about specifically that the how you continue your samsaric cycle. Dependent origination in itself is simply when this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. That's dependent origination. Right? And you could probably see that in a mind moment. Right? Because you can observe this arises in your mind, and then that leads to this. Right? This ceases in your mind, and then that leads to this ceasing. Your mind ceases to become agitated, and so your thoughts start to cease, right? So in that regard, you could say, okay, this makes sense, because it's literally everything. Everything in your experience, you can observe dependent origination in. Because everything in your experience is sankhara. Everything is conditioned. And something that is conditioned means that it comes to being because something else is already there. It will cease when something else ceases. All right. Dallas is talking about being a monastic. Well, possibly. Possibly, Dallas. All right. Well, Javier, see, this is the thing about especially very deep Dhamma concepts, even within Theravada, even within the same country, you will have, 4 different senior monastics, and they will have 4 different perspectives. Right? They might have a same core perspective, but then they're going to teach it and go off in little tangents here and there. So it's very, it's not a surprise to have such a diversity of thought and understanding with regards to something as deep as dependent origination. I forgot the chickens. What? I'll name the title of the stream "Chickens and Monks." How about that? Oh boy. Jose, no, I don't think Dar became a monk, monastic. She was in Thailand for a while. I saw her. She came, I think 3 weeks ago. She came to my Second Life session, and that's the only time I've had contact with her in almost a year and a half, 2 years. She was going to become a monastic. I don't know. It's not easy to become as a female to become a monastic in Thailand. It's not easy at all. Yeah. All right. I think since it's past 9, we won't do any reading of a sutta, Adriana. Even though I was going to do Kakachupa Masuta. So Adriana sufficiently riled up the base to ask lots of questions so that there wouldn't be any sutta readings. So let's do our guided meditation now. And then at the end of the guided meditation, we'll have some time to read suttas. We'll read from the Samyutta Nikaya verses as we have been. All right. See, Amelia Nair, she's excited about it. That, you know why? Because she's new and fresh and she wants to hear the Dhamma. Adriana's kind of been here like, I've been doing this for enough. It's been long enough. Let's not have any sutta readings. And I know you like suttas too, Adriana. Well, we're having fun here. That's all. All right. Just not the sutta from last time? You mean the Mahanidana Sutta? The dependent origination sutta that we were reading? That we only got about halfway through? Yeah. All right. So let's do our guided meditation now. Let me get my gong here. Set your body up in a stable and comfortable position. Then begin by bringing your awareness to your feet as we scan through our body a little bit before we do our mindfulness of breathing, so that we can adjust our posture and set ourselves up in a way that we can sit for longer periods of time with less pain. By bringing awareness to a part of the body, this means that to try to come in contact with whatever sensations and feeling that can be found there. Like for the feet, the feeling of the feet touching the ground, pressing against the ground. Or if you're in a cushion, feeling of the feet pressing against your legs in the ground. When you get into the habit of doing this, you'll start to notice when your body is not balanced in your posture. You'll start to notice when there's small feelings of discomfort that turn into larger pains later on. And you'll be able to fully understand and have mastery over your posture. Bring your awareness up through your ankles to your calves. Through your knees. Your thighs. What is the feeling of the thighs pressing against the chair or the cushion? Can you feel the hamstrings and tendons in your thighs stretching out if you're on a cushion? Especially if your knees are hanging unsupported. If you're sitting in a chair, to support your posture, it's best to have your knees be over your ankles, so your legs form a 90-degree angle. Not slouched and spread all over here and there. Bring your awareness to your pelvis and hip area. This is an important area for your posture, especially the upper body. The position of the hips and pelvis can impact the position of your spine and whether your upper body is leaning or slouching. If you're sitting on a cushion, it's important to check that your sits bones, your buttocks, are evenly distributed on the cushion to support the balance of your posture. When you're ready, bring your awareness up through your abs and your chest. Check to see that your spine is in its natural, neutral position. And your upper body is not slouching or leaning. If you are using a chair, try not to put all of your weight pressed against the back of the chair. Try to let your own body support. This way you can build your posture, strengthen your body. Bring your awareness to your shoulders, checking to see that they're hanging loosely, not scrunched up tight. Bring your awareness down through your elbows and your hands, checking to see that your elbows and hands are in a comfortable position that supports your posture, does not cause leaning or slouching with the upper body. And finally, bring your awareness up to your head. Check to see that the chin is parallel to the floor. The head is not leaning or slouching. But resting comfortably on the upper body with the neutral spine. And once you've set your body up in a comfortable and stable position, let the body go and take 3 deep, silent breaths. And then let the breath go. From here on in, you do not wish to manipulate or control the breath in any way. Your job is to simply observe the breath, watching this body as it breathes in and as it breathes out. This body has been breathing from the moment you were born and will continue to do so until the second you die. It doesn't need you to do its job. So always remember your job is simply to observe, investigate, and abide with the breath. Remember to lay down your burdens. Put down your world for the time of this meditation. You'll be able to pick it back up later. But for now, practice letting go and stay with the breath. As you're following your breath, you will become distracted. Your mind will want to wander to the past or the future, the other side of the world or galaxy. Whenever your mind wanders, or whenever a distraction takes you away from your breath, first acknowledge that you've become distracted. Marshal your mindfulness and awareness back to this present moment where you have been distracted away from the breath. Then practice letting go of that distraction by not getting agitated and pushing it away, or getting excited and clinging to it. Simply try to just let it go, let it be, and return to the breath. The breath is home. It's always there waiting for you. Whether you pay attention to it or not, it's there doing its job. Always ready for you to come and follow it. Acknowledge, let go, and return over and over. While following your breath, every once in a while, pay attention to the state of your mind. Is your mind becoming more tranquil and peaceful or not? If it is, you may begin to notice more subtle, refined characteristics of the breath. You might be able to see how the breath is changing. Sometimes the breath is short and shallow, sometimes long and deep. Stay with the breath and observe these various changes and flows. As we spoke about the divine messengers at the beginning of DHammapalooza, I think it's good that we spend the last couple minutes of our meditation reflecting on the 5 subjects of contemplation. I'll say a line and then I'll ask for you to repeat it to yourself. And then we reflect on what we've said, contemplate it, and try to realize it and understand it. So the first line, repeat after me. I am subject to old age and decay. I am not exempt from old age and decay. If you like, you can imagine yourself in front of you, like looking in the mirror, watching that person, that view of yourself getting older, frailer, gray hair, no hair. Really reflect on the fact that you are getting older. Some of you may be too young to have experienced the first gray hair and various signs like that. And some of you may be many years into experiencing this decay. Because not only are you subject to old age and decay, all beings everywhere in samsaric states are subject to old age and decay. And not even just sentient beings, but plants, even planets and stars, even galaxies, solar systems, all subject to decay. Nobody is exempt. It is the nature of this reality that we are born into. Now repeat after me. I am of the nature to grow sick. I am not exempt from being sick. All beings, not just ourselves, are also of the nature to be sick. Any kind of system, like the body, any kind of machine, is subject to breaking down, being ill. Because we have this body, sickness and illness come right along. No one is exempt from that. We may even try to eat as healthy as we can, exercise, and take the most amount of care of our bodies as we can. But no one should delude themselves in thinking that they are then immune from illness. They have mitigated illness, but they are not exempt. Repeat after me. I am subject to death. I am not exempt from death. Not only am I not exempt from death, but all beings everywhere are not exempt from death. Even planets and stars and solar systems and galaxies, all will one day fade away, be no more. All ends in death. Nobody is exempt. Repeat after me. I will be separated from everything and everyone that I love. Not only will you be separated from everything and everyone that you love, all beings will be separated from everything and everyone that they love. How can it be otherwise in an existence that has the divine messengers? Old age, sickness, and death. How can there not be separation when there is old age, sickness, and death? Separation is part of existence. Repeat after me. I am the owner and heir of my actions. My actions are my relative. Whatever I do, for good or bad, to that I shall be the heir. Not only am I subject to my own karma, not only is my karma my heir, but it is the same for all sentient beings. All of us are responsible for our actions. All of us are owners of our actions. In this life, from previous lives, and future lives. The Buddha told us, whether you were a woman or a man, lay or ordained, that we should keep these truths close, reflect on these often. Doing so will lead to your benefit for a long time. You will not be heedless. You will not be ungrateful. You will not take for granted. You will not waste time. If you keep these close. All right, friends, slowly start to come out of your meditation. Opening your eyes, becoming aware of the room that you're in, the computer and the live stream, all of your Dhamma friends in the chat. Adriana, this might be a very first. We actually gained people from our guided meditation. We didn't lose any. So Adriana and I always joke about the post guided meditation drop. In the past, we've had about half the people just drop off. Maybe they ran away. Maybe I put them to sleep. Who knows? Hey, Chris. Welcome. So we have our final 18 minutes or so. So in these final 18 minutes, if you have any questions or comments or topics, you can post those. But also, we can read some verses. It's always, this is very nice and chill to read Samyutta Nikaya verses. They're not very deep. It's not like, having to read Dependent Origination, so Adriana doesn't have to complain and worry about it. Audrey, did you just join literally? Or were you here? Were you not here for the beginning of this Dhammapalooza? I don't know if I quite get your. Oh, in general. Well, see, that's a lie. Your mind is lying to you. Everyone else knows what's going on. It's like everybody else on Facebook is living such wonderful, happy lives. It's a lie. Your mind is lying to you. It's okay. So when you're in the beginning, the best thing to do is to be like be like a sieve. The best thing for you to do is to listen and just soak it all up. Don't worry about knowing everything and understanding everything. Just listen. Just keep listening. Soak it all up. If you don't understand it, okay, no worries. Don't worry about it. Just keep listening. Keep listening. Start to practice regularly, and then you'll start to gradually, slowly understand. And you won't feel like you're lost. Right? There are plenty of us that are still lost. Basically, everybody in the chat, unless there's an awakened being here. I don't know anybody in the community here who's awakened. So we're all still lost. Right? It takes time. I remember my early days when all I had for suttas was access to insight.org. This was before I bought like the Bhikkhu Bodhi translations. Actually, it was before two of them were even out. When I first started learning Buddhism, only two of the four Nikayas were actually out by Bhikkhu Bodhi. And so one of the things I loved about Access to Insight is they have a little button called Random Sutta. Right? So you press the button and a random sutta pops up. And I'd read it and I'd be like, I have no idea what's going on here. Next. Click. I kind of understand this one. Next. Click. Right? So I would just kind of go with click the random button, and whatever would pop up, I'd read it, and most of it I didn't understand. And that was okay. Right? And just, okay, well, I don't understand it. I'll just let it go. Let me look at another one. Right? So in the beginning, no problem. Just let it all sink in. Just keep listening. Do your practice. Don't worry about not understanding, and just let it be. Over time, you'll grow in the Dhamma and you'll understand. Yes, Ananda is our community's every person. Ananda is the patron saint of people who don't quite understand. All right? We invoke Ananda many times in the Discord. That's the way it goes. Yeah, Audrey, just listen. No problem. And if you have questions, ask questions. If you don't, also okay. If you don't have sometimes in the beginning, you don't even know enough to be able to ask questions, right? But then as you start to learn and you say, oh, wait a second, I'm confused about this point. Let me ask this question. And Adriana, yes, the 5 recollections can be done as a contemplation or meditation. That's fine. It's just like metta, right? But essentially, when I first came up with the idea of the 5 contemplations guided meditation, I just basically kind of like, well, I'll just kind of do what I do for the metta guided meditations, but I'll do it with the 5 contemplations. There you go. Works out. Whenever I do a mindfulness of death retreat, that's the first guided meditation I teach. Because that's really where it should start. 5 subjects of contemplation. Before you get into body parts and corpse decay and all that stuff. Start with the 5 subjects of contemplation. All right. Let's do some reading a little bit. A little bit of reading. Where am I here? Samyutta Nikaya 2.7 with Panchalachanda. That's an interesting name. Panchalachanda. At Savatthi. Standing to one side, the god Panchalachanda recited this verse in the Buddha's presence. The opening amid the confinement was discovered by Buddha of vast intelligence, who woke up to absorption, to jhanas. The sage, the solitary bill, even amid confinement they discover. All right, here's the link. Good call, Adriana. Even amid confinement, this is a confinement. This is interesting. Can I check the Pali? What's going on here? Huh. There we go. Anyway, said now the Buddha says, the principle for attaining extinguishment, those who have acquired mindfulness are perfectly serene in samadhi. Next one, Tayana Sutta at Savatthi. Then late at night, the glorious god Tayana, formerly a religious founder, lighting up the entire Jeta's grove, went up to the Buddha, bowed, stood to one side, and recited these verses in the Buddha's presence. Strive and cut the stream. Dispel sensual pleasures, Brahmin. A sage who doesn't give up sensual pleasures is not reborn in a unified state. If one is to do what should be done, one should staunchly strive. For the life gone forth when laxly led just stirs up dust all the more. A bad deed is better left undone. This is an interesting one, right? The life gone forth when laxly led just stirs up dust all the more. If you read the suttas, you see that the people who have gone forth, they'll say the household life is dusty. The monastic life is like free air, right? So this is where this is alluding to. Life gone forth that's lazy, like a lazily led monastic life, makes more dust than a layperson's life. Right? Just stirs up dust all the more. Very interesting. A bad deed is better left undone, for it will plague you later on. A good deed is better done, that does not plague you. When kusa grass is wrongly grasped, it only cuts the hand. So too, the ascetic life, when wrongly taken, drags you to hell. Any lax act, any corrupt observance, or suspicious spiritual life is not very fruitful. That's what the god Tayana said. Then he bowed and respectfully circled the Buddha, keeping him on his right side before vanishing right there. Then when the night had passed, the Buddha told the mendicants all that had happened. Mendicants, tonight the glorious god Tayana, formerly a religious founder, lighting up the entire Jeta's Grove, came to me, bowed, stood to one side, and recited these verses in my presence. The Buddha repeated the verses in full, adding, "That's what the god Tayana said." Then he bowed and respectfully circled me, keeping me on his right side before vanishing right here. Mendicants, learn these verses of Tayana. Memorize these verses of Tayana. Remember these verses of Tayana. These verses are beneficial and relate to the fundamentals of the spiritual life. So obviously Tayana had it right. I think maybe we'll do one more and then we'll call it a night because we have only a couple minutes left. The moon at Savatthi. Now at that time, the moon god had been seized by Rahu, lord of the demons. Then the moon god, recollecting the Buddha, at that time recited this verse. Homage to you, Buddha, hero. You're everywhere free. I've wandered into confinement. Be my refuge. Then the Buddha addressed Rahu in verse concerning the moon god. So this is interesting. So Rahu is an eclipse, right? So the moon, an eclipse. The eclipse, Rahu has taken over the moon. It's also the name of an Ashura king. So you're talking about the moon god, I assume, it's a deva. So this is an Ashura who is an eclipse has taken over the deva. Yeah, that's pretty neat, isn't it? Yeah. Then the Buddha addressed Rahu in verse concerning the moon god. The moon god has gone for refuge to the realized one, the perfected one. Rahu, release the moon. Buddhas have compassion for the world. Then Rahu, having released the moon, rushed to see Vaipachati, lord of demons. And stood to one side, shocked and awestruck. Vaipachati addressed him in verse. Why the rush, Rahu? You released the moon and came here looking like you're in shock. Why do you stand there so scared? My head would have exploded in 7 pieces. I would have found no happiness in life if, when enchanted by the Buddha's spell, I had not released the moon. All right. Okay, friends, I think that is okay, so friends, so that is it for Dhammapalooza for this week. Let's do our chanting. Let's do our sharing of merits. Dukkha patta chane dukkha, baya patta chane baya, soka patta chane soka, hontu sabbe pipaniyo, ettavata cha mehi sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhiya, akasata chabumata deva naga mahiddika punyang tang anumoditva charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share in this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Oh, may all beings share this merit that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. I missed that one. One of these days I'll get the English right. So, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. So, friends, that is the end of Dhammapalooza once again. So, hopefully I will see you again next week, same time. I almost had it, Adriana. I just missed one line this time of the English. Polly, no problem. So, Dhammapalooza is over. I encourage you, if you'd like Dhammapalooza, to come join us again every morning from Monday through Friday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. So this is going to be in about 10. So in about 10 and a half hours, I'll be back on the live stream here with views of the mountains and morning monastery experience. So we'll do a morning monastery experience is about 20 minutes to a half hour. It's doing precepts if you'd like to take them, doing a little chanting, and then a little Dhamma talk, a little thought of the day. So, and then also, as Adriana says, if you are interested in learning and practicing through the scope of the early texts, you can send an email. Adriana, you can post the email for us, maggaseka@gmail.com, and we'll send you an invite. And I think that is it. Let's just make sure the email gets in there. Really? Did I see it? I don't see the email. Did I miss it? Anyway, that's the email. Maybe YouTube did block it. I don't know. Interesting. Okay, friends, until next time, may you have a spiritually successful and peaceful week. Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy. Practice well and be well. I've posted the link. It's maggaseka@gmail.com. So it's my website's name, right? If you know my website, if you know the name of this channel, the Pali name of the channel, maggaseka@gmail. Very nice and easy. There we go. Okay, friends, until next time.